One of our favorite stories of Elford history is something that happened during the Great Depression, and there was a hard bid project, and Elford went at it aggressively to build one of the first bridges in Dublin over the Souda River.
It's a great story. Obviously, I was not there when it happened, but my dad was very proud to talk about it.
You work, and you plan, and despite your best efforts, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And we've all heard the old saying, better to be lucky than good. A blind squirrel finds a nut, whatever you want to say. So maybe some could say we're all here today at Elford in the year 2020 due to some good old-fashioned dumb luck of a coin toss.
So there we were in 1935 at the height of the Depression. We were 6 years into the Depression, food lines, soup lines.
There wasn't a lot of work at that time, and things were very, very slow. The economy was very, very tight.
And at the time, Elford, the first quarter century, most of it was in public works, a lot of bridges and a lot of big industrial projects. So this was our sweet spot. This bridge was our sweet spot.
Elford at that time was a leader in poured-in-place concrete, and it was a hallmark of Elford Incorporated for years and years to come.
So our owner took a bid for the project for the dam up in the Dublin area.
The actual bid results were an exact tie to the penny.
Remarkably, Elford tied exactly to the penny with another contractor in Central Ohio for the low bid on that project. And
as I understand the story, and that's not a very statistically, that's why many contractors don't use even numbers. They wouldn't say like $1 million. It would be $9,987,000, something like that. Okay.
We had an actual tie on bid day, and so the law on the books was if the two general contractors agreed to it, they could toss a coin. One flip, one toss.
And even today, the Ohio Revised Code says that on public work, if two contractors bring exactly the same low price to a project, then those contractors, if they agree, can flip a coin to see who won the work.
Pop did the coin flip, and boom, we won it. So it kept us in business.
Pop Elford wanted to make sure all of his employees had at least some money coming in.
He was able to preserve the company. He was able to keep our workers working through a modified work schedule.
When we talk about culture, it's thinking about everybody before yourself. And so those two men thought about that group of 40 who were family, and they said, how do we do this? So
made a difficult but great decision to split the crews into two smaller crews. So
nobody got rich, but nobody went broke. Nobody lost their home.
5 hours a day for each shift, so a total of 10 hours. And that way he can employ every single employee on that one job through the slowest time during the recession.
There wasn't unemployment insurance at the time, and no other federal programs to help them. So our company was way forward thinking in how do we keep our people's livelihoods in place? How do we take care of their families? How do we make sure they have food on the table and a roof over their head? So,
and I think that's really important, because it would have been easy to have taken your rock star A teams only, done more layoffs at a time when there just was no work, and sort of cherry pick the best of the best.
We wouldn't be here today as Elford if we hadn't won the Dublin Bridge. So it has significant importance in our company's history.
So really rich and proud part of our history. We don't tie many projects anymore.
And at the end of the day, I would offer that we're still talking about that story this many years later, and everything that it meant to the commitment of the family. And I believe that the company that I work for today is still the same company.
I don't want to say my father was superstitious, but he decided that he would never risk losing a project again by having it be a tie. So from that point on, every single bid that we turned in, he rounded down, and the last three numbers were always a 987. So it was his lucky number 13 that he took off of every project. And you may think that's funny, except if you were the one sitting downtown on a pay telephone back then, having to fill out the number at the very last minute, and you had to get it in at exactly the right time or they would throw your bid out, and you're trying to write all that out on 3 copies. So yeah, it was cute, Dad, but it was challenging.
I think it was heads, but depending on if you ask a story and you got one from my grandfather, you got one from my uncle, you got one from Jeff Copeland, the answer to that question seems to be different depending on who you ask.
You know, I could make it up, but I don't know whether it was heads or tails or not, you know.
One of my father's favorite sayings was always, never ruin a good story just for the truth. So I think it was heads.